Pools. In the air, left field, and Pools has given St. Louis the lead. A dramatic, towering 3-run home run.
Murray out of the pocket. 7 seconds. 6 seconds. Murray hits it downfield. It is. Oh, it's caught. It is caught. DeAndre Hopkins.
Kevin Durant way outside. Delivers. Kevin Durant from downtown. It's a 6-point game.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant good evening. Looks like my stream had a little bit of lag. I don't know what's been going on recently with the StreamYard. I'm going to have to take a look into this. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Lewis Sports Network. It is your boy Lewis coming at you once again with another heavy hitter live stream with yet another video. Make sure to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, make sure your notifications are turned on, make sure you guys are sharing this on your social media platforms. Truly appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who took the opportunity to come on this live stream and also in the chat. Appreciate you. Shout out to the LSM Mod Squad, as I always like to do. Like the video, subscribe, and make sure you guys have your notifications turned on, sharing on your social media platforms. Truly appreciate it. Usually I would be doing basketball, but you guys know that I also like to talk about football and I also like to talk about wrestling. And tonight is a very special live stream, and I want to invite my guest. I just saw Brandon had came in, but apparently I can't see him. So let's get the pleasantries out the way. I want to invite my guest, Jacob Lone Wolf. Jacob, say hello to everybody in the chat and, everybody watching.
Yeah, what's going on to everybody? My name is Jacob Lone. That's my avatar name. So, I'm just, happy that Lewis invited me on today to talk about wrestling. It's been a while. I think the last wrestling live we talked about, was it the CM Punk one?
Yes, it was.
That was a good live stream. I definitely had, a lot of fun talking about, wrestling there and Punk, wrestling. So when Lewis invited me today, it was a no-brainer, So, I responded immediately and said, yeah, I'm ready to go. And it looks like we have another guest. I think his name's Brandon. I'm also excited to talk to him about wrestling, just to talk to other people about wrestling, because it's a big part of my life, I'm a basketball fan, but in my core, I'm a real wrestling fan more than a basketball fan because I've been watching this since I was 5, and just so much memories,
Right. Sean, I got you next time on the next one. Definitely gonna invite you. I just had to get Brandon on because Brandon has been like trying to get on, but it's like at the same time he's kind of been nervous because he thought about he wasn't sure like if he was gonna do well. But the biggest thing that and I saw Jay giving advice in the chat. The biggest thing is to be yourself. It's okay to, mess up and everything. Again, it's all about trying to get comfortable. When I started doing this YouTube thing, it was people were telling me, it's like, you have kind of like the right attitude in terms of what you want to do, but it's like it looked like you needed a little bit personality. So you got to grow with it, man. And so without further ado, let's get my main man first time on here, man. Brandon, what's going on, my man? Good to see you, man. First time I know it's on the live stream. I know it's a little bit nervous, but I'm glad you're here. And welcome to the live stream, man. How's everything with you today, bro?
I'm good, man. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm
okay.
good. Thanks, man. I appreciate you inviting me on.
No problem. So we're here also with Jacob and then Brandon. So appreciate you both being here.
Hey, Jacob, man, what's up?
Hey, Brendan, was good, man. I'm very, very excited that, you're on the live stream. It's good to talk to another guest about wrestling. And hey, bro,
Likewise.
It's all right, man. There's no need to be nervous. I was nervous when I first started doing YouTube, but over time, it's just about being comfortable conversating online. So it's all right, man. You can get through this.
Thank you. Thank you all, actually. I do appreciate it. I just tell myself I type on here all the time, so the only difference now in typing is you just hear my voice. So
yeah, that's the difference. I mean, it was the same thing when I started doing YouTube videos. It was a matter of I would go into other channels, I would type in my comments, and the thing is like you feel comfortable because nobody can see your face and nobody can hear your voice. It's a little bit different when you're doing both now. And also, if you decide to, if you have the time to type and obviously look into the comments, it took me a while to get comfortable and be comfortable in my own skin doing this. But once I found my niche, once I started getting advice, once I started to see and study like what are things that I needed to change on my channel, and then obviously, obviously the equipment comes next. But again, it's all about like what are you trying to do? Where are you trying to grow with this channel? So you grow within yourself as you also do your channel. It's like you guys are two peas in a pie. You're growing up together. So that's what I realized when I started doing this. And, that's what it's all about. But shout out to everybody in the chat. I'm not going to get to everybody. I saw Mayor in there. Shout out to him. Shout out to LBJ King. Shout out to Jay, who's been obviously giving great advice. Shout out to Highlight Reel. I saw you in there as well. Salute to you guys. Salute to Sean Okafor in there. I got you next time on the next GOAT series, Sean. I'm going to definitely invite you on the panel to get this one. I just wanted to get Brandon on this one because I know he is a lifelong wrestling fan and he's been trying to, obviously he gives great expertise in the chat. But I just wanted to give him an opportunity to share his thoughts on the platform. So, guys, so to get started, as you guys can see the background, as you guys can see my background, we're talking about this is making the case for the GOAT series, Wrestling's GOAT. We're talking about The Undertaker. If you guys have missed it, I uploaded my Bret Hart video. For those who don't know, The Excellence of Execution, I did a 15-minute upload where you guys can go check that video out in my video archive. So whenever you guys get the opportunity, make sure to go check that out and see what are my thoughts about why I think Bret Hart makes the case for being the greatest wrestling superstar of all time, in my opinion. When the way I narrowed it down is I feel like there's maybe about 12 to 13 guys probably in the history of professional wrestling that can make the case for wrestling's GOAT. It was a very difficult list for me to do. But so far I've only done one, and with with Brandon and Jacob, we are doing a live stream to discuss the other one, and that is The Undertaker. So I wanted to ask you both to start off. Undertaker has wrestled for 3 decades of his life that he's committed to the wrestling business, and if you want to include his Mid-South Texas wrestling days along with his days in WCW. The guy's been wrestling almost 4 decades, but 30 of those close to 40 years he spent in the WWE. So what are your fondest memories and what you guys remember when you guys first laid eyes on the Undertaker? And I'm going to start with you, Jacob, and then Brandon, you could get on the back end. So go ahead, Jacob.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah. So my fondest memories of the Undertaker. So obviously, I didn't get to see him during the 90s because I wasn't born by then. But my fondest memories of the Dead Man was probably, I'd say, mid 2000s. And I remember, so pretty much like I started watching wrestling when I was 5. So I think I probably would have seen 2005 and 6, those type of years. And obviously, my fondest memory of him was, I think, him going up against Mark Henry at WrestleMania 22. If you remember that match, the casket match. So
Yes.
I think that was the first time that I was introduced to the Dead Man. And then obviously, I don't know, like when you're a kid, right? You think wrestling is still real. You think that this is all real. Like, so when you see these characters on TV, right? I don't know, it just captivates you, It's one of the reasons why people love watching wrestling when they're young. And I remember he would always come on SmackDown and the lights would go off. And then I'd always ask my dad, who is that? And he would always say, it's The Undertaker. And I think I was just drawn to him, And I just remember his matches against Mr. Kennedy. If you remember that rivalry, I remember his rivalry with Batista, Edge. Those were the good years. Shawn Michaels. So Undertaker's obviously been wrestling for like 3 decades. So there's obviously a lot of fans who came in different decades that witnessed and experienced Undertaker at different points in time. Like for instance, you probably experienced Undertaker during the 90s. Brandon, I'm not quite sure which age, but maybe the same for you, or the 2000s. For me, it was the 2000s. So I think I experienced The Undertaker obviously as the Dead Man, but obviously I did go back in history and watch, obviously, when he debuted, and just to see the evolution of this character over time. It's just a testament. Yeah, Vince created a character, but ultimately it was Mark Calloway, who's his real name, that really made the character come to life. And I just think that he understood in wrestling, like, here's the thing in wrestling. And a lot of superstars, they try to show everything in one match. They try to try to build up this larger than life character in like as quickly as possible. And Undertaker, I remember he was doing an interview, and basically his method was he didn't want to show everything in one match. Like he would basically do a build up, to basically have longevity throughout his career. And that's what a lot of the old school wrestlers thought. Shawn Michaels was one of them. Triple H, these characters evolved over time because they had a long term mindset. Undertaker barely did interviews because he felt like he was discrediting himself and it was a disrespect to the business if fans saw him as this badass Undertaker on TV and in real life he was just a normal guy. So he was very meticulous and very careful with his character that I think that a lot of superstars nowadays don't do. And I think that's probably the biggest success of Undertaker's career. Don't get me wrong, there was other successes, but I think his success to his character was it's unique, authentic, and a lot of the fans didn't really know too much about him. And when people don't know too much about you, it increases excitement and it increases curiosity. And I think that's what he did great at.
You know what? I do agree with you on that. The elusiveness is what draws me to Undertaker. He didn't, until he supposedly retired. I say supposedly because we don't know if he's gonna really retire or not.
Mhm.
He said he's retired, but we don't. Shawn Michaels said he retired, and look at him. But the elusiveness, he didn't break character until this year after that WrestleMania. But to answer Lou's question, what sticks out to me about the Undertaker? Well, I'm 36 now. I remember watching. I don't know if it's Superstars or not. Back in '91, the early '90s, when Undertaker put the Ultimate Warrior in the casket.
Yeah.
I
remember.
I remember crying, saying, "I hate you,
I remember.
Undertaker. I hate you." So yeah, that's one of my biggest memories of the Undertaker. Him sticking the warrior in the casket. I watched a lot of the old stuff on the network and just looking at that particular era of Undertaker, that the whole mortician thing. I know my family members, religious background, they're appalled by that.
Wow.
Me personally, I love it. The black, the caskets, the look. I love it. I wore black when I was in high school. I wore all that stuff. So I'm the black sheep of the family.
Okay.
So that's one thing that comes to mind. And I just love the corporate ministry, him busting Stone Cold Steve Austin in the face with that beer bottle.
Okay. So, during the Attitude Era. Got you. Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah, those are the things that stick out to me.
Oh man, that's cool, man. That was a really nice. That was actually a unique story that you did. That's pretty cool. Like I didn't know that, so that's awesome to know.
Thank you.
The very first time that I actually saw him was actually on his Survivor Series debut. I remember it was the Dream Team that had Dusty Rhodes, Coco Beware, and the Hart Foundation. They were the tag team champions at the time. And for those who don't know who the Hart Foundation are, that's Bret Hart and that's Jim the Anvil Neidhart. So that was the original Hart Foundation. They were no longer with Jimmy Hart at that point. Going up against Greg the Hammer Valentine. I think it was Honky Tonk Man. They were known as Rhythm and Blues. Actually, no, Jimmy Hart was managing them. There you go. And then you had Ted DiBiase with Virgil, and then out came the Undertaker with Brother Love. And the first time I saw him, I said to myself, like, this has probably got to be the scariest cat that I've ever seen in my life. I remember I was 3 years old when he made his WWE debut. And the fact that I remember that was pretty crazy. There were times where I didn't even remember superstars that I actually even watched in wrestling, and my parents would actually remind me, and they would tell me, we used to watch this all the time. Like we used to sit with you and we used to watch, but I vividly remember watching The Undertaker. And it was just that whole mortician gimmick that he had, just the black trench coat, the the gray and black tie that he had, the hat, and it was just the intent. Those eyes. There was just something about his eyes that anytime he looked at the camera, it was just you were just shook. And I remember that he made an immediate impact when he came in and had the whole audience just scared, like, what in the hell am I looking at right now? Like, what is this? Like, you know, it was unbelievable. And this was a guy who originally he played basketball and he was supposed to go overseas, but felt like he didn't have a career at that because Taker really loved basketball and he played football when he was in college and in college. So he and obviously he went through those many gimmicks that he was in Mid South Wrestling, and then obviously going into WCW where he went through all those names as the Punisher and Mean Mark Callis and all that. Um, I remember it's crazy because WCW, for those who don't know, they didn't think he was going to be a big deal in WCW at all. They said that as great of a wrestler as he was, there was no way that he was going to be able to sell to the audience and have a long career. The real funny thing about it is that when he came to the WWE, they had nothing for him originally. This is from what Vince said. So it looked like if he was not going to have pretty much a career at all, and he obviously didn't even know what to do because I think his contract was coming up, and I think WCW had offered him about the same amount of money for 1 year, and obviously he wanted to make more, but he couldn't do that if he was to stay with them, and they were going to give him just a 1 year offer. They weren't going to extend the deal. They weren't going to give him much money, just because they didn't think that he went through just so many different gimmicks, but it was like nothing was sticking. And Jacob speaks the truth when he says that his ability to be able to stick, to be able to evolve his character, and that's what he really made the character what it is as well. But Vince was the one that actually called him. I think this was like several weeks later, and then he actually gave him the name The Undertaker. He said, "Hello, is this The Undertaker?" And Taker looked confused on the phone, like, who's he talking about? And then he just went along with it. And he said, well, I guess I'm The Undertaker. And he said, yes, this is The Undertaker. So Vince already had thought about the gimmick. And let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys believe that The Undertaker is probably his greatest creation?
Go ahead, Brandon.
If not, then it's up there. I definitely put that up there.
Okay, shout out. Oh, before real quick, shout out to J Jeff in the chat. I see you. What do you think, Jacob? Do you think that he's his great? Taker is Vince McMahon's greatest creation? Is he up there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that's no question. Did Vince create the Hulk Hogan character, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Hulk Hogan that was the one that?
That's good question. I'm sorry, Lou. Go ahead. Your stream.
No. Okay, no. I was just gonna say that I think Vince had something to do with it. But I think it was a small. I don't remember the story fully, but somebody else has something to do with that. Vince kind of put a small part into that, but he marketed everything else. But when it comes to the character, I don't think so, though.
What about Stone Cold, Steve Austin?
Stone Cold was more so. Stone Cold was actually that was more so Stone Cold because if I don't, well, Jacob, you don't remember this one, but I think you mentioned it a little bit. I think in one of our live streams, I think it was in the CM Punk live stream. I don't know if you guys remember, but so when he came in I think it was late '95. He came in '96. But I think the taping of the Raw event was in '95. I think it was in December of '95. He came in as the ringmaster, and that gimmick did not work because he was with Ted DiBiase at the time. So what happened was that he started to change his look a little bit and then became Stone Cold. But the problem is he wouldn't become Stone Cold until obviously going into the King of the Ring. But that was more so Austin's idea because Austin said that he felt like he was not being himself and they were trying to force the ringmaster gimmick on him and it just was not working. So Austin went to creative team and he wanted to be himself. It's the same with The Rock. For those who remember Rocky Maivia and how that gimmick did not work, especially with the way the business was changing, both Austin and The Rock are very similar in the fact that the reason that their gimmick, their character was so successful was because they were allowed to be themselves in their character. That was the key for both of those guys. It's the same thing with Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. When they got to be the New Age Outlaws, they're two different people, but they blended together and were able to be successful together because they found the gimmick that was able to work with them. Considering the gimmick that they had before, it was just not great. Billy with Rockabilly, and that was a terrible gimmick. And then Jesse James being the real quote unquote Double J, that was a terrible gimmick too. So so it was so that was more so the case with Stone Cold. It was just he went to creative team because he did not like the character he had. He didn't like it. And it was the same with The Rock. It was, and JR is the one that gets credit for giving The Rock his nickname. So so Rocky Maivia, for those who don't know, JR is the one that calls him The Rock. So that's where The Rock's name got from. So if you wanted to find out about that, but yeah,
Triple H too. I remember he was the Greenwich snob before that, and when he was in WCW, he was John Paul Levy, another forced up gimmick. And then he finally joined DX, and then DX done this to continue, and then he started doing his own thing. It just seemed more organic, more authentic.
right, right.
And then other controversial situations, but this is the Undertaker topic. I don't mean to.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. Sometimes the thing is, sometimes when we're talking about when we talk about one superstar, the conversation sometimes is going to drift to another superstar in relation to the character. So that tends to happen sometimes. But again, obviously, we're talking about Taker. Let me just go into the chat real quick before I continue. Ryan says at that early stage it was Hogan, then later obviously the Undertaker. And I'm actually going to answer the question myself. Do I think that The Undertaker is the greatest gimmick? Jay says, I like the Hollywood blind stunning Steve Austin. I thought that was a very underrated gimmick. It's just WCW didn't know what to do with Stone Cold. I thought that he had a very creative mind for the business, and WCW screwed up. Can you believe the fact that they had Triple H, they had Stone Cold, and they had The Undertaker, three guys that are now Hall of Famers in the WWE, that WCW had, and they did not know what to do with those guys. It's crazy. It is unbelievable.
Guess who else they had?
Who else did they have in WCW that ended up being a success in the WWE? I'm trying to think.
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Because that's right. Oh no, I was just gonna say that because Scott Hall was known as the Diamond Stud. I forgot what other name he was under as well, but he was under a different name. But he was the Diamond Stud when it went to WCW. And then obviously Kevin Nash was Oz. That was a terrible gimmick. They had Vinny Vegas. That didn't work. I mean, Kevin had personality. It's just, again, he didn't have the right shtick. And then obviously when he went to the WWE, became Diesel, then Big Daddy Cool. And Big Daddy Cool was his most obviously successful gimmick before going to back to WCW on a guaranteed contract with Scott Hall. And then obviously they formed history with Hogan with the NWO and that. Okay, but getting back to Taker real quick and then answering the question, is The Undertaker the greatest gimmick that Vince has probably ever created? It's a difficult question. At the same time, though, it's an easy one. And the reason I say that is because I think when you talk about, the thing is, when you look at Taker, it's crazy how an intimidating presence, you're considering his size, because even though Hogan was big, you could clearly see the difference in ring work. Hogan was just very good in terms of marketability, his ability to sell promos. Undertaker was so special about him was he was athletic for a guy that was 6'10", 6'8", 6'10", 6'9", whatever you want to put it in that frame. The guy was damn near 330 pounds, and this guy was so agile for somebody of his size. You never seen anybody like him. And then you have obviously the intimidating presence that he would come with anytime he walked into the ring. So getting back to the question, I think I'm going to have to agree with Jacob. I think The Undertaker may be the greatest creation that Vince has ever made, even with the success of Hogan in the 80s. And obviously the 80s were a different time, obviously, but I really think that The Undertaker may be the greatest gimmick that Vince has ever had. And I actually will tell you why as we go deeper into this discussion. Now,
I'm behind. Oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say I'm behind y'all on that. I think now that I'm listening to everything, yes, and on top of that, the character never got stale. He always added a dimension to his character, kept it fresh, and he
right.
really cared for the character too. Gotta respect it.
Right. And then shout out to Weapon X. I see you in the chat. Let me see. Oh, that's right. Sean says Booker T elevated his fame with the WWE. Oh, I think yeah. It took him a while because he got off to a rough start. But I think once he found his niche, Booker T became one of the more celebrated. I think the crazy part about Booker T was I think he would have been much more underrated, like much more underrated, had he had never gone to the WWE. But I think we probably wouldn't talk about him as much if he had not gone there. So you make a great point, Sean, because I think that going to the WWE, it elevated Booker into what he became. He became more decorated, and people got to recognize how great of a performer he really was. And the thing is, you actually got to see sides of Booker T that you did not see in WCW. So I think that was a very important factor that he actually went there, and he got to make a career out of that. Weapon X says the facts are that Hogan transcended and elevated wrestling to a new place, much like MJ did for the NBA. Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. You look at merchandise sales, you look at the history of WrestleMania, that's synonymous with Hulk Hogan. You look at the moments that Hogan had, especially in the mid to late 80s, like there was never going to be probably arguably anything like that. That's how big of a star Hogan was. Sid Vicious as well had success in the WWE. That's actually absolutely correct too. I loved his Psycho Sid gimmick. I don't care what anybody says. Ryan says, if you notice, Kevin Nash was Stone Cold Steve Austin before Stone Cold because of his entrance. You could kind of say that. I wouldn't say he did have an attitude for sure. I mean, Sean and Kevin Nash were obviously known as the two dudes with attitude for a reason. So I guess in some way it was, but I think Austin kind of transcended the attitude. His the breaking glass entrance. Yep.
The only person I feel that they messed up in WWE dropped the ball on is Vader. I don't like how they used him at all. After he got smacked in the face with the wrench by Kane, it just went downhill from there.
Okay, so let me continue to look at the chat and then we'll answer the next question. The Undertaker to me is the most underappreciated reason why the WWE is still in business. That's a very fair point. What do you think about that statement, Jacob? Do you think that's he's the most underappreciated reason why the WWE is still in business? I don't know if you guys have heard, but Taker actually came out and said that the current product is kind of soft right now in terms of what the WWE is producing. A lot of guys have kind of commented on it. I think Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, Edge just recently came out and said that I think his words were taken out of context, which is, I think in a case it might be. But what do you think about that, Jacob? You think he's the most underappreciated reason why the WWE is still in business?
Okay, so I think so it's a two-part question, right? So I'll answer the first one. I think fans, as far as maybe let's just say when it comes to the fans always show Undertaker love, right? But in corporatism, that I can see how he might be underappreciated. Now, if you look at all the superstars, like I'm talking about like big time draws that have been in the WWE for a while, he's probably the most loyal superstar that's ever been to Vince. Really, I'd say he's probably much more loyal to Vince than Triple H. Just the longevity, as far as because Undertaker during the '90s, he probably could have gone to WCW. I'm pretty sure once there was a draw in WWE, they offered him a lot of money to go to WCW. But at that time, you notice how WCW, they're not great at building stars. No. WWE was great at building stars. What WCW did was offered a lot of money where WWE built the stars that came from WWE, and then they brought them to WCW. And I think, yes, from one aspect, that's a good thing. But once you give a person a lot of money and once they're established, they're no longer hungry. So they had a lot of these superstars like Bret Hart in WCW in the '90s. I think the only successful one was Goldberg. He was probably the one that was built up in WCW. I'm pretty sure there was others and Booker T and stuff like that. But a lot of the WCW dropped the ball. So I would say from the Monday Night Wars against WCW, I think Undertaker was the pretty much important front line soldier. He was pretty much the loyal guy. He would teach the young, he would basically back Vince. He would teach a lot of guys. He was a locker room leader. So from that aspect, I do think that he is kind of underappreciated. And Vince, I think Vince is probably he's. I think Vince appreciates Undertaker to a degree, but obviously we have to understand about Vince. Vince is greedy, you know, and
Oh yeah.
a lot of the superstars that have left him, it's not the fact that they weren't loyal, is that the wrestling business as a whole just, and even though I love the business, it's such a shit business the way that they treat their superstars, you know, if you look at the pay scale and stuff like that. And if you're not in that inner circle, then you're not going to be a big draw. And the reason why I brought this up is now I'm answering the second question. The fact that Undertaker said that, I can see why he said it, you know, but at the same time, he comes across like, I wouldn't say bitter, but it's definitely that old man type of vibe. Get off my lawn, you know, that type of analogy. And I think the reason why it's foolish for him to say that is because the business has changed. See, back in those times, Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, like they were the product, meaning that Vince had to find larger than life superstars to basically compete against WCW. So they had much more freedom. And then Vince Russo, you didn't have like a big you didn't have a big creative staff. You probably had maybe Vince Russo, a couple other writers that would write the whole show, and they would interact with the superstars. That's why I think the Attitude Era was the way it was, because not only did the superstars have control of their character, Vince Russo and all those writers, they interacted with the superstar to basically come up with their gimmick for that night show. They don't do that anymore. Now WWE, they have a whole staff of writers that the superstars barely communicate with. And so you have a bunch of guys that are writing all these storylines, and they're not writing it to appease the superstars, they're writing it to appease Vince. So the superstars don't even have a say in that character. If you're not in that inner circle, then you're not going to be a big draw. So Undertaker, I think it was kind of like if I was a superstar, I'd be pissed, man. Like I don't like Vince has created now the WWE company is a public company, right? They appeal to shareholders. Now the brand itself is bigger than the superstars. They've made it to a point, and like I said before, that the brand is bigger than the superstars. So even if superstars wanted to become a big draw, they're going to put the kibosh on it, because Vince does not want the superstars to ever be bigger than the brand ever again, because of Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hogan, and after Brock, I think Brock left. I think he decided, no, you know, there's no superstar that's going to be bigger than the company. And John Cena was pretty much one of those last superstars to where he's ever going to be a marquee name. And that's why he'll never be an Austin or Rock, because it wasn't organic. He was just put in that slot, and he was only the number one man that was only going to be the face of the company. And even if you were a guy that got organically over like Rusev or Ryback and all those guys, you're never going to be in that slot. So that's why I feel like I disagree with what Undertaker said. I think superstars want to be edgy. They want to do that, but they're not allowed to.
Yeah, no, that's it. No, Jacob, you just just hammered that, man. Those are some napalms that you put up in there that with what you said, and I 100% completely agree with you. So, and the thing is that I can understand what Edge is saying. I forgot Edge's full comment, but I was reading a little bit. Could the media have taken Taker's words out of context when he said about the current product is soft? Maybe they may have. Edge is also right. And the thing is, I think what Edge actually said in his comments is actually touching upon what you're saying, because Edge was actually talking about it's a matter of eras. And you're absolutely right, Jacob, because in the Attitude Era, the superstars have much more creative control, especially the top stars, the top big stars, because there wasn't really a big staff. The guys that I think about, it was I know JR was part of creative team for a bit. Bruce Pritchard, he was part of creative team. You mentioned Vince Russo, who obviously ended up going to WCW. He gets credit for putting the New Age Outlaws together. And I think he's also gets credit for the Rock being in the Nation of Domination as well. But that's another thing. that's a whole nother story for another day. But basically, Edge was talking about is like every single era is going to have its strengths and it's going to have its challenges. And if you look at the challenge today, everything everything was not, there was really no social media in the 90s compared to what it is today. Like so that was another key point. Like everything is under a microscope, like much more so now. It's just the thing is, what people have to understand, the difference between 90s media and then today's media is there's a lot more social platforms for your branding compared as to in terms of like if you look at the news media and then TV media, they had much more control. Whereas now it's really more so the social platforms. And like Jacob was mentioning about, branding. And if you look at at the end of the day, Vince is a greedy guy. He will never, ever, 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 ever allow any superstar that has had success in his company become bigger than his business. He has always been like that. You just take a look at his feud with Hulk Hogan in the early 90s when the wellness scandal happened and Hogan sued the WWE and took him to court. Vince at one point almost lost his business. Fortunately, the cases were dismissed in terms of the lawsuit. Because think about it, Vince, we would have never, the future of the business looked bleak if Hogan would have won that case. So we're fortunate that we got to see all of the other superstars. The Undertaker probably wouldn't have the longevity as Jason, as Jay mentioned in the comment. Longevity is a real important thing, but it's also what you do with that longevity that's going to really determine the success of your career. Because a guy like the Undertaker who spent 30 years, I mean, that's just a long time. You probably wonder, like, what did he do in those 30 years? Like, did he, was he like an ambassador to the WWE? Was he part of the developmental talent? Taker wasn't doing that in any of those 30 years, man. And at any time, you're probably going to say, okay, this is getting old. But like Brandon was saying, and you were saying, Jacob, for 30 years, he found a way to continue to change and evolve and elevate and keep his gimmick strong, always finding something different, because Taker knew if he got lazy, if he got stale, that would have been the end of his career. And we would have only remembered for the years that they were he was at his peak. And we didn't get to appreciate that. But it's also goes back also to what you guys were saying, at the end. The reason that, he lasted as long as he did, and that's what you guys were talking about, is because of the fact that, again, more creative control for these top guys in the business. Shawn Michaels was on record as saying that he even told Vince, he said, look, man, I will never tell you how to run your company, but just leave the wrestling to me. And like Jacob said, the stars would always be able to talk with the few guys that were in the writing. Now we have a whole crew of staff members, staff creative team, that they just want to make sure that they appease Vince McMahon and everything runs to him. There's really no communication between the star. Look how long it took, and you guys can attest to this. Look how long it took till they finally made Roman Reigns a heel. I have been saying that for years. And look at the work that Roman is putting in now. And Roman has actually done a great job. But it took him forever. They tried to force him into the face of the company. They made him into this robotic face. It wasn't clicking with the fans. He comes back a heel. He's all jacked up. He has an impressive physique. Vince has always been a musclehead guy. And look at Roman now. He's the face of the company, but now he's the heel. So, and let me ask you guys this question, and I know it's a little bit off topic, but I don't know if you guys saw, and I want to get your opinions on it. Because I know we're talking about the Undertaker, and the reason I wanted to mention this guy is because I think Undertaker had one of his most successful and underrated feuds with this superstar. And Jacob, you're gonna love this one. The rated R superstar Edge. He just won the Royal Rumble, right? He obviously had in quotations, the greatest wrestling match ever with Randy Orton last year during peak pandemic last year at the Backlash pay-per-view. He just won the Royal Rumble. He's already been on Raw. He's been to NXT. He's going to meet with Roman Reigns on SmackDown. But the reason I had mentioned Edge is because, wait a minute. I was just thinking about something. Wait a minute. Hold on. Dang, there was something I was trying to connect the Undertaker with Edge. What was it now? Hold on. Okay, let me. Oh man, I just forgot what I was gonna say. I just lost my train of thought. Um, it'll come back to me as I talk. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. To both of you guys, because it was basically about um, it was something about Edge that I was trying to remember, and it was in relation to the Undertaker. It was because, man, what was it? What was it? What was it? Hold on. In the meantime, let me go to the chat before I start thinking about it. Then I ask you. But it's something related to with Undertaker. But let me just get on real quick. Um, Jay says that Vince is like the Puff Daddy of wrestling. If you know what I mean, he's not. Oh, now I remember. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Vince McMahon. Okay, let me ask you guys this question. Because Edge won the Royal Rumble, in both of your opinions, and anybody could jump and start. Do you think that with Edge winning the Royal Rumble, the WWE is lacking star power in your opinion?
I'm gonna let Jacob go first, if he
All right,
doesn't
thanks.
mind.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Oh,
No
do you
problem.
want to go first? Or
It don't matter.
I'll go. So, did you say if the WWE was lacking star power?
Yeah, with Edge
Um,
winning the Royal Rumble, because I don't know if you guys have been noticing, but they've been bringing, they brought Goldberg back to have a match with McIntyre. They brought Edge back to win the Royal Rumble. Christian made an appearance at the Royal Rumble. I actually watched the 2021 Royal Rumble, and he made an appearance. So my question to you is in relating to Edge, because I'm going to talk about Undertaker and Edge. It was actually one of my favorite feuds. I'm surprised it doesn't get talked about enough.
absolutely.
Um, in your opinion, guys, do you think that with Edge winning the Royal Rumble, the WWE has done a poor job of establishing their other stars in the company, and it's telling you that the WWE lacks star power, in your opinion?
Yes, and and I'm not mad at Edge. Actually, when it came to the Royal Rumble, as far as storyline wise, I can see it. Because I think with Edge, I do not want Edge to face Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania. I want him to face Roman Reigns, because I think with Roman, Edge is going to elevate Roman as far as like just promo wise and match wise. I think Edge is going to do a great job. But to answer your question, absolutely, man, absolutely, I feel for the talent, man. And even though I don't know what goes there, because you have to understand, right? You're busting your ass 365 days a year. You're not seeing your family. Well, it's a pandemic, but usually you're on the road 200 days a year. And when you allow these part-time guys to come in and take their spot, now don't get me wrong, wrestling like any other business is draw. So if you're not really a draw, then you can't get mad if somebody's a part-time that takes that spot, because they put asses in seat. But if you're building up stars, right, and you bring these old timers to just crush them like Goldberg, and I have nothing against Goldberg, then you're really doing a disservice to the new generation, because now you're stifling your talent to where they could appeal to the fans. Because you have to understand, wrestling, when like the era of wrestling, it pretty much like whatever is trending around the world, usually wrestling pretty much builds their business around that. So in the 80s, it was mainly like what do you call the hippie era or something like that, where you would see a lot of these wrestlers dress a certain way, but it
Yeah.
was actually the times that like they actually looked like what society was during that time. Then in the mid to late 90s, I think Lewis. I'm not quite sure because I wasn't born back then, but back in the late 90s, right? Obviously, rap was big at that time. Would you say like to the mid to late 90s, was that like a rebellion era? Because the Attitude Era was like a rebellious like age during that wrestling time. But did the world actually reflect what the Attitude Era was at that time? If you could answer that.
Hold on, let me try to get. You said if the world was rebellious in relation to the Attitude Era at that time, you were asking.
Yeah, yeah, like something like that. As far as like the Attitude Era, how like you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, it was very edgy and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It was edgy
Mhm.
television. Did the Attitude Era pretty much reflect what was pretty much going on in certain aspects of society at that time, to where people got sick of their boss or something like that, or there was mainly like the young generation? It was like be like what do you call being yourself and stuff like that. Just being
Well,
rebellious. Yeah.
well, let me say this. I mean, if you, I would really more so say in the early '90s, early to mid '90s, I would really want to say that if there were certain rap groups and certain hip hop groups that were really edgy at the time and putting content where they were really trying to be themselves and they were trying to, I look at guys like the NWA. You look at obviously Tupac. Guys who were just different. Guys who would where people would have opinions on them as to say that their kind of music, is it's bad for society because it's always going to be obviously in the way that people view things because they feel like it's a threat to society, while others feel like they're sending a message. They're sending a message, in terms of like what's really authentic and then what's the truth. That's kind of what the Attitude Era was in a sense. It was kind of like you got the real edgier truth. Guys were being themselves. There was no gimmicks, no BS, nothing was fake. This is what Vince did. He wanted to make things as real as possible. Even during the generation years with some of the storylines that happened there. During the Attitude Era, like that's what it was really about. And the thing is, the Attitude Era technically it started way before Vince made the PSA announcement after the Survivor Series, and then officially quote unquote claimed that this is the Attitude Era. But it kind of started before that. But this was really pushing it, honestly. So yeah, in a way, it was, and I would just really more so connected with different like innovative groups, that were pushing the envelope, like especially in those early '90s, that were doing that. But Brandon, man, what's your thoughts, man? Do you think that with Edge winning the Royal Rumble, the WWE is lacking star power today, in your opinion?
Yes. I'm gonna piggyback what you and Jacob said. How do I put this in words? I'm not gonna say so much that it lacks star power. It's just so much as the people backstage don't know how to build the stars. Either
Right.
either that or they pitching ideas to Vince McMahon and he's saying no.
That's possible too. I didn't think about that. That's true.
Because listen, the fact that he don't want nobody like another Stone Cold, the star being bigger than than the promotion.
Correct. Facts.
And I'm also gonna agree. I also agree with y'all I'm not mad about Edge winning it either. I'm not gonna lie to you. I like Brock, but anybody but Brock, because he's not hardly there.
Correct.
But I put myself in the younger stars situation. I'm bumping and grinding, putting my body out there. Just to see a part-timer come in and get a championship match. What the heck what am I doing wrong? So yeah, I do agree. It's so much as they don't know how to build nobody. That's more, it's creative. It's uncreative to me. They got to figure that out.
Okay. Real quick, Sean makes a nice point. He says, but I will admit, as a hater of the PG era, 2020 wasn't that bad for the WWE. Drew McIntyre and Roman had got me interested as far as the new generation. Yeah, those guys actually were making me watch. I was actually happy with Drew. Shout out to D's World in the chat.
I love Drew.
Appreciate you. That's right.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good, man. You're good. Drew McIntyre, he has a redemption story. So I was very happy for him when he won the title. I thought that I felt like there was a couple of times when he came back in 2017 that he came back to the WWE. I felt like there were moments where it was like he was getting him in a main event push, but then they were trying to push him back. I felt like it was kind of a nip and tuck back and forth, but I thought that once he got rid of Dolph Ziggler, really got to establish himself. They had him win the Royal Rumble. He got to build his momentum going into WrestleMania, going up against Brock. I thought it was a great moment when Brock got eliminated with the Claymore kick. Vince tried to make Brock look as dominant as possible. And the fact that Drew had that moment, I said to myself, man, Drew's character, it was on fire. And then after that, his promo started sounding really good. Then after his promos, his I don't know what happened to his in-ring skills. I was seeing something different. And I was like, I didn't even know that Drew can do all of this. and that was with him going back to, he went to Ring of Honor. He was in TNA. This was after he had previously got fired in his first run with the WWE because he ended up being a jobber from when he was with the 3-man band with Jinder Mahal and Heath Slater. Jinder Mahal's case, though, his case was more so of Vince wanted to bring in the Indian market. So that's why they kind of pushed Jinder Mahal. But I could be the first one to tell you, McIntyre has way more talent than Jinder Mahal. And even just overall, like I didn't even know McIntyre really evolved his mic skills. He's good on the mic, like now for me. So, there's that. So yeah, Edge winning. I'm happy for Edge. I have no problem with him winning, but it does really show that the WWE does lack stars. They don't develop their talent really well, and it shows. Guys, they put these guys in meaningless storylines. You just don't know what. I look at the Alexa Bliss thing with The Fiend. The Fiend's been off of TV for a while, and she's been doing some great work in the ring. I just don't know how long it's going to last. So that's going to be interesting. Okay, so now that I say that, let's get into the rivalries of the Undertaker and what makes him great. Let me ask you this before we get into the rivalries on some of the best superstars that he ever faced in his career. And I know Jacob has got, like I said, his personal favorites, especially from the time that he started watching wrestling, and then he got to see some of his moments with the Undertaker. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Paul Bearer. Because there's no Undertaker without Paul Bearer, despite the fact, and I just mean in terms of career, because obviously he came in with Brother Love in 1990. But I think in February of 91 was when Paul Bearer was introduced to the Undertaker, and obviously they became synonymous together. And Paul Bearer was there for like about the first 6 years of his career. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on just the unbelievable chemistry pairing of Paul Bearer and The Undertaker, for both of and I know, Jacob, you didn't really get to see Paul Bearer in your time. I don't know if you've seen videos of him. I'm just going to say this real quick. I thought it was the perfect pairing. And the one thing that the little details of when they did promos together, what was so cool was, if you guys notice, when Paul and I suggest you guys go watch their early work, Undertaker would have his head down, because he would obviously speak in a dark tone, and then basically he would be the guy that just wouldn't say a lot, because the Undertaker's character is supposed to be kind of mysterious, quiet, a man of few words, and intimidating in just some of his phrases and what he's going to say in the promo. I thought Paul Bearer's expressions and his acting was just incredible, and I thought they were the perfect match together. And the crazy part is Paul Bearer is an actual mortician. For those who don't know, like, he is an actual mortician, and it was crazy because it just went perfectly. So, do you guys think, in your opinion, that there is no Undertaker without Paul Bearer in your eyes, if he wasn't with him in the beginning of his career?
Yes. Well, the only reason I really say yes is because for me it's the big picture. Because I'm thinking about the chemistry with Paul Bearer and Undertaker at the beginning. I'm also thinking about Kane, bringing Kane into the fold years later.
Okay.
That whole thing. I tell you what, because I took some time off watching wrestling in the mid-90s.
Okay.
My friend showed me WrestleMania 14, and I seen Paul Bearer that's built to that match. The whole thing is, as crazy as it was, Kane being caught on fire and all of that, it was special. The whole story was special to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think without Paul Bearer, would we have Kane? Would we have that WrestleMania 14 match? Classic. That's why I say yes. But, that's just me. Other people probably think otherwise.
Okay. No, you know what? You do make a case, just for the fact that whatchamacallit, Sean is right, though. I thought that the Brother Love pairing was actually very off. I just thought that Paul Bear's creepiness and the way, and like I said, I just thought that his expressions and his acting skills, I just thought that they blended in perfectly with what the Undertaker was about in terms of character. I just don't think Brother Love's character meshed well with the Undertaker in terms of what the Undertaker was trying to portray with his mortician gimmick. And obviously, we've had many different looks, obviously over the years. Um, so yeah, the Undertaker Kane storyline. I'll talk a little. We'll talk a little bit about that, like all in between. But I just wanted to get both of you guys. We got to talk about the rivalries, man. The rivalries with some of the Takers. Some of Taker's like just his best work, his best rivalries, and then obviously to me his underrated rivalries. That the ones that don't get enough credit for how good work that they were. Looking back on it. Let me start with you, Jacob. What for you was some of the Undertaker's best rivalries that were great for his career, and then it was able to elevate also the other talent that he was able to go up against. In your opinion, some of the best. And then obviously some of the underrated ones that doesn't get enough credit, in your opinion.
Okay, so it's kind of a tough one because the man has competed for 3 decades. So there's been so many wrestlers that he's competed against. So my top 5 superstars that he's faced will probably be of my era. And I'll let you and Brandon talk about the 90s. So I'll pretty much talk about the 2000s. So for
Go ahead, man. Fire away.
I'll say... So there's really 5 rivalry of guys that Undertaker's gone up against that I would say that is in my top 5. Now, I'll put Shawn Michaels first up there. Even though that was late in Undertaker's career, just the storyline and everything leading up to it, I'll put Shawn up there. Second, I'll put Triple H in there because, believe it or not, they've actually faced 3 times at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I think the most forgotten match of it is probably 2001. WrestleMania 17. I mean, I wouldn't say I just don't really remember that match, but I remember the last 2 matches that they had in WrestleMania 28 and WrestleMania 27 and 28. The third one would probably be I'll put Kane in there. I'll definitely put Kane in there. The fourth, believe it or not, I'll put Edge. Edge is number 4, and fifth would probably be. Ooh, that's a tough one. Fifth would probably be. I'll go. I'll probably have to say, and I know that, even though they didn't face a lot, I'll probably put Randy in there. And I know I missed Batista and stuff like that.
Okay.
I have to do a top 10, but that's my top 5. It could change anytime, but the top 4 are definitely there, and the reason why. The interesting rivalry, I would say, Undertaker, in my opinion, let's just start off with Shawn. Now, the reason why I feel like Shawn and Undertaker didn't really work that much, specifically during their prime, was because they didn't really like each other, Lewis. If you know that, Undertaker said that, when he first met Shawn in the business, stuff like that, during the Click era, he did not like Shawn at all because he felt like Shawn. Was kind of like a scumbag, and Shawn was a scumbag during the mid 90s and late 90s. He definitely had an attitude adjustment, and obviously with Triple H and the Click and stuff like that, I felt like if they had faced in their prime, it definitely would have been a great match. But I think later in their career it was better because they had much of a story to tell. But I don't want to cover everything, but I would say that rivalry with Edge, man. I think that was probably the most fun times that I've ever had watching somebody feud with the Undertaker. Specifically, that rivalry spanned from 2007 to 2008, And when Edge was on SmackDown as a heel, there was so much elements that came into it, I would say Edge is probably the most organic heel ever in the business. I'll put him, I would say he's a better heel than Randy. I'd even say during that time he was probably a better heel than Triple H. I think Edge was probably the most organic heel in the company, and when he rivaled with the Undertaker, I just think that not only did Undertaker elevate Edge, but I think Edge elevated Undertaker as well. It made his character much more real because Edge was such a badass heel that everyone hated him. I hated Edge growing up. That goes
Right.
to show you that he did his job as a heel. Obviously he was with Lita, but I think the real heel Edge was probably with Vicky. When he was with Vicky, man, just that time during SmackDown 2008, Edge costing the Undertaker the World Heavyweight Championship against Batista at Armageddon at the Hell in a Cell in 2007. The Undertaker being banished and not being able to go up against Edge for the heavyweight title. Their match at WrestleMania 24 was very underrated. I think that was probably Undertaker's top 10 match at WrestleMania, just as
Okay.
far as storyline wise, and just the moves and the spots during that match. I'll definitely say, for me, the funnest time that I've seen Undertaker have a rivalry was with Edge. Probably even more so than Triple H and Shawn Michaels as far as longevity wise. Because with Triple H and Undertaker, they feuded at WrestleMania and they had feuds here and there throughout the years. But I think with Edge, that rivalry was like a real rivalry with each other, and including Dave Batista. But I just think that Edge, man, like to me, like he had a great rivalry with the Undertaker, and obviously Kane. I think Kane made the Undertaker as far as like making him more real when he debuted because now you had a polar opposite. You had an opposite. Undertaker was the black, blue, dark, what do you call character, and then you had his brother who was like this big red machine that represented hell and stuff like that. So they brought the best out of each other, especially during the late '90s, man. They brought out a lot in each other, and you had Paul Bearer in the mix. I definitely feel that if there was no Paul Bearer, that definitely Undertaker's career wouldn't have taken off like that. Specifically during the beginning stages of his career. Now, when Undertaker evolved, I don't think that Paul Bearer was needed as much because Undertaker was established, and I think he could cut promos on his own. But definitely during the first couple of years, Paul Bearer definitely should have been there. But I think for me, the two rivalries that stick out in my mind, for me personally, would probably be Edge and Kane. And I think Kane, and that 2004 WrestleMania 20 match was very dope, because that's when, if you don't know what happened, I think it was Survivor Series 2003. It was Undertaker going up against Vince McMahon, right, in a Buried Alive match. And obviously the winner won, and the person who lost was buried. And Kane came out and attacked the Undertaker and buried him as the American Badass. And during that year in 2003, Kane was on fire, man. That's when he unmasked himself. He had a feud with Shane. I think 2003 was Kane's year, just as far as storyline wise, because we never got to see who Kane actually looked like. So when Kane buried the Undertaker, you just knew that just the symbolism of the Buried Alive match. Undertaker's character as the American Badass was dead, and he was basically becoming the dead man again. So when he returned at WrestleMania 20, I just think that match was underrated in of itself because it brought back the Undertaker as we knew as fans. So I just think that as far as like those superstars, for me, I enjoyed watching the Kane and Edge rivalry. For me personally, I think those two guys, those were some of Undertaker's greatest rivalries.
All right, man. What about you, Brandon?
Me? Oh man. I'm a '90s head.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you want to call this a rivalry, Undertaker versus Ric Flair. I just finished watching that match where Undertaker wanted to face Ric Flair at the WrestleMania. I think what was that?
Okay, 18.
Yeah.
Toronto, Canada. Yes, I remember.
Exactly, and he beats the crap out of David Flair just to bait Undertaker into that. I mean, Ric Flair into that. That match was brutal. The haymakers and all that stuff Undertaker threw, just the whole setup of the match was. I love that match, but a big rivalry come to mind. I forgot to mention with the Paul Bearer Undertaker thing. Mankind, Mick Foley.
Oh
my God!
yes.
That Hell in a Cell. I came and watched that match. I feel bad. I know it's all staged and it's predetermined and it's all, but the beating Mankind took in that match, I cringe. I cringe now. Like, man, is he gonna survive? Is he gonna survive this match?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big rivalry that comes to mind.
Okay.
Randy Orton versus Undertaker. And Randy Orton had one foot out of the door, and that WrestleMania match, that whole rivalry kind of put him back. You know, Randy Orton had his drug problems and all that stuff. He
Right.
was
Mm-hmm.
not a nice person. He another one, that Hell in a Cell late in 05. He another one who took a beating by The Undertaker. That was a good rivalry. Getting his father Bob Orton into it, the mind games Randy Undertaker played with Randy Orton. Good stuff. Oh wow. And yeah, I gotta add Edge and Undertaker into that fold.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I was like, man, Undertaker beat the snot out of Edge. That's how good of a heel Edge was. If you can actually have me saying, yeah, just man, beat the snot out of him.
Right.
That was awesome. It did this SummerSlam 08 when Undertaker choke slams him in the ring and all the ring of fire.
Oh, by the way, real quick, that Undertaker Edge match at SummerSlam with the Hell in a Cell, and I know that they had changed the way that the Hell in a Cell had been used, which is one thing I don't like about today's Hell in a Cell, and made into a pay-per-view. But that was actually one of the last real good Hell in a Cell matches. Probably the last one, in my opinion, was that SummerSlam 2008 match. That was a classic. Doesn't get talked about enough.
I agree with you 150% on that. Great match. Shoot, man. There's a big gap in between that Randy Orton Taker and Edge and Taker rivalry. Shoot. I haven't seen too much of Undertaker versus Batista. I took time away from wrestling after a friend of mine died.
Okay.
Oh, man. I got to go back to that.
All right.
Oh,
Cool.
man.
All right.
Go ahead.
No. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, man. That was pretty cool, no doubt.
Thank you.
Jacob made some great points, and again, and the one thing that Jacob really did was that he stuck to his era because it's what he grew up on, and I recommend to everybody that's in the chat, and even to you guys, to continue to watch classics because what I've done going back is that when you're small, you're a fan. You're just in awe of what you're watching and how much you appreciate guys who grow up. Once you get older, it's like you always keep going back to the finer details. It's always those finer details in wrestling that you try to find out, the behind the scenes, what's going on. As Jacob has always mentioned time and time again, and whenever we talked about wrestling in our streams, again, guys, make sure to like the videos. You guys comment. Okay, so for Undertaker, what makes him so special for me is he's another guy that to me doesn't get enough credit for elevating talent. Randy Orton comes to mind because, like you said, Brandon, and even that you mentioned, Jacob, this was one of the most talented guys that the WWE has probably had in a long time in terms of Randy Orton. And you're talking about a third generation superstar who had 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door because, as talented as he was, he had a lot of off the field, off the ring issues. Outside the ring. He was looked at as a prick. That's number one. And then obviously he had a little bit of trouble with some guys in the locker room. And so, Brandon, you mentioned a little bit, but his rivalry with Taker, and if you look at the build up to WrestleMania, I thought the WrestleMania match proved to people that Randy Orton could be a main event superstar, despite the fact that they prematurely put the world title on him in 2004. Beating Chris Benoit and becoming the youngest world champion in history. It all sounded nice, but he failed. His face was pretty much put in cow manure after that title reign. It was not great, but so I think Randy. But if you're looking at the guys, I mean, first of all, Kane to me has to be at the top of the list for this reason. Like you mentioned, Brandon, you're talking about, and same thing with Jacob. You're talking about a polar opposite character, aka he's played by Glenn Jacobs. For those who don't know Kane's real name, a gimmick like that, a storyline like that, can die down really fast if you don't have the right people in there and the right story angle. The fact that Taker and Kane were able to make it work is the reason why I probably would have Kane at the top of the list. And the crazy part is that they've went through many different phases together, because you obviously had that indestructible Kane of 1998. They became the Brothers of Destruction. Obviously, Undertaker, changed his look, to the American Badass, and then obviously he became Big Evil. Jacob talked about with Kane, removing his mask, and he'd had one of his greatest years of his career in 2003 with a lot of great storylines he had. And getting back, touching up on Kane a little bit, another underrated feud that Kane had. We talk about Undertaker and Edge. Jacob, I'm pretty sure you know about this one, but Kane versus Edge in 2005. That was a really underrated rivalry. Doesn't get enough credit. That was really some entertaining stuff. Between him and Edge, and so getting back on it, with Kane has to be at the top, because when you get two characters like that, and you're able to make it work, considering what the storyline is, because stories like that, they die very quick, and then there's obviously no direction, for the characters on where do they go from here. Trying to figure out. So the fact that Kane and Taker had that rivalry as long as they did, and were still able to elevate and keep their characters relevant and elevate themselves during the Attitude Era. Because sometimes you look at characters like that and you don't think that they would last in the Attitude Era, but the thing is, that's just the great acting and obviously the great storytelling that they were able to put for them to last that long in that era. Is a testament to their abilities to perform not only in the ring, but obviously with their characters and gimmicks. So that definitely got to put that. I have to put Shawn Michaels up there for this reason. Jacob talked about obviously the second half, and obviously, in my opinion, Undertaker's greatest match at WrestleMania 25, between him and Shawn. To me, that was the best match that they had. But the thing is, they had great chemistry together. 97, when Shawn and Undertaker first got together, in terms of their build-ups for the Ground Zero, and then obviously the first ever Hell in a Cell match. In my opinion, the greatest Hell in a Cell match. I think when you talk about match quality, I have to give it to the first Hell in a Cell, because the second Hell in a Cell with Mankind was more so for unforgettable moments, and mostly it had to do with Mankind, in terms of what happened to his body. So that's what that was. But in terms of match quality, in terms of acting, the first Hell in a Cell for me will always top that second one, even though what the Hell in a Cell with Mankind obviously did. But Shawn Michaels is definitely up there in terms of their rivalry. I thought their rivalry in 2009 was some great work leading up to WrestleMania, and then obviously they, in my opinion, they put on the greatest match that I've ever seen in WrestleMania history. So Shawn is up there. You have to have obviously Mankind. You got to have Mick Foley there, because what they did in 1996, unbelievable rivalry. Jim Ross called it a prison riot with the way that their rivalry was. It was physical. That's what I loved about the rivalry between them two. It was very physical. It was such a physical rivalry, and it was just great storytelling between Mankind. And then obviously we already know about the Hell in a Cell match in '98. In terms of, the crazy part is that they actually set a new standard for what they did that night in the King of the Ring. I know you guys are talking about AJ Styles. AJ Styles is definitely one of the greats for sure. Despite the fact that his road to the WWE was, obviously it was a long road, but
I would have loved to see AJ Styles versus Undertaker with fans.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they just had to do it with the whole boneyard match, in terms of making it into a movie to end his career. But I mean, there's a lot of dream matchups that we could mess around with what could have been with in terms of gimmicks, or Taker in his prime, obviously. So yeah, I have Kane, I have Mankind, I have Shawn Michaels. So those are my three. If I look at the other two, like I said, Undertaker versus Randy Orton was underrated for sure, but I wouldn't put that. I would say that is more of a top 10 for me than a top 5. Trying to think of who would be his other. I would want to say Yokozuna, but to me, that was more top 10 as well. And rest in peace to Yokozuna. I thought he was one of the more underrated superstars ever. Larger than life character, and was unbelievable in his short time in the WWE. Rest in peace to him. For those who haven't checked it out, make sure you guys go watch that little documentary. It's a 43-minute documentary. Just type in it's called The Final Days of Yokozuna. Make sure you guys go check that out, man. It's some great stuff. A lot of things about Yokozuna that I never knew about, especially getting to know Rodney, the person. Great stuff. Make sure to go check that out. You could type it in on YouTube. I'm pretty sure I'll do that. So there's. I wanted to put him, but I have to put Edge there because I think, kind of like what Jacob was saying. I just thought the way that Edge was as a heel, and if you look at the WrestleMania 24 match between him and Edge actually came out a bigger star without even having it to damage The Undertaker, because obviously The Undertaker ended up winning the world title that night. But if you look at the way the match was, it was making Edge really it showed that Edge can main event at WrestleMania. And it was like he ended the night. And if you look at their match, what was so cool about it was the fact that Edge put such an unbelievable performance, and Taker made him look good in terms of Edge was countering just about every single Undertaker move. Like, Undertaker got to do it eventually, but the thing was he was countering everything. And I'm like, this is the greatest match that I've ever seen Edge display. And Edge has been in so many great and classic matches, but the fact that he was going toe-to-toe and even countering Taker's moves, I'm like, damn, could Edge really break the streak? That's what was so special about the match that Edge had. Like, as I was like, if he keeps doing this, he's going to be able to beat Taker. And it was like, Edge is going to be, maintain his world title. And then what does that do? Edge is one of the most decorated superstars of all time. And I think he's a bit underrated in my opinion. But the fact that, what could that have done if he had beaten Taker that night and had ended the streak? I think Taker was 15-0 at that point, trying to go for 16-0. But Edge definitely deserves out there because I think that their buildup was also excellent leading up to WrestleMania. They had a great buildup, and then their rivalry extended to the next couple of pay-per-views. I think they had a TLC match, I believe, in 2008. I think that had Undertaker go through a couple of tables, and then Edge gets his world title before obviously losing it to CM Punk with the Money in the Bank briefcase that Punk ended up winning at that WrestleMania at 24. So Edge has to be up there. I have him at number 4. And then at number 5, I mean, wow, it's like it's really like so difficult to kind of like put, some of these guys in terms of who he's battled with over the years. You see, I would have wanted to say Stone Cold, but for some reason his rivalry with Stone Cold doesn't really stick out to me like that. For some reason, it just doesn't. They've had some good matches, but I wouldn't say their matches were, they were spectacular. And I've seen all Undertaker Stone Cold matches, but I felt like some of their matches were like too deliberate, too deliberate. And so I can't put Stone Cold up there. So Undertaker Stone Cold, no. I guess I would have to go with Batista. I'm going to have to put Batista because if you look at their 2007 rivalry, you look at the matches they had, all of them were very good quality matches. They wrestled in a Hell in a Cell match. They wrestled at Cyber Sunday for the world title with Austin as special referee. They obviously had the steel cage match. They had the last man standing match. And then if you look at the way that their match went back and forth at WrestleMania 23, Batista also looked believable to where he could have won the world title. So I just thought that the match quality between both big men was some of the best stuff that I've seen, especially in a year. And I think that was actually one of, because I think that what happened was Taker. I think when you look at Taker's in-ring work, he wasn't really showing up to WWE like events like that after, I would want to say, 2010. He was making little appearances, and he would come kind of year after year. That's because he was also starting to get injured a lot, and his body was starting to break down. But I think So my 5 would be Shawn, Kane, Mankind, Batista, and Edge. Because I just think that, like Jacob was talking about with Edge, the buildup was great, the rivalry was great, and then you really saw like how good of a heel Edge was. Uh, when Edge first became a heel in 2005, when he became the most hated heel, I think Edge was arguably in Edge's time, and I think Jacob would agree with me. Edge was the most hated heel in the company. You look at what happened with him and Matt Hardy, and then you look at where Edge got. Edge was the most hated heel at that time. He was the hottest and the most hated heel at that time. If we're going 2005 to 2008, he was the most hated heel in that 3-year stretch. So so I would look at that. So like his rivalries, it's difficult because he's had some good ones, but so it would go Kane, I think is his greatest. I would put Shawn second. I would put Mankind third. I'd put Edge fourth, and then I would put Batista fifth as for my rivalries with Taker in terms of some of the best stuff. Now, let me ask you guys this question. I could probably assess this more to Brandon. Uh, Brandon, what was your thought on Undertaker when he changed his gimmick um, to the American Badass? Like, what did you think about when he changed to the American Badass and then became Big Evil for that like 3-year stretch that he had after he was done with the whole, with the whole Ministry of Darkness, Prince of Darkness, Dead Man persona that he put on pause before going back to it, as Jacob mentioned in 2004. You're on mute, Brandon.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I figure I show my face so you'll know who you're talking to for a second.
It's cool.
I actually joke around about that gimmick. that American bad bleep gimmick. I ain't gonna swear on your stream. That's the modern day Mean Mark Callis. Like I said, it was cool, man. To just add another. It just goes to show that he can do a whole lot more than a dead man. Diversified it a little bit. I thought it was nice. I did at the time I didn't care too much for it, but now that I'm older and my taste has changed, I liked it. Modern day Mean Mark. If WCW or Jim Herd, the Pizza Hut owner, knew any better, that would have been him. That's how that character would have looked like. But yeah, I think it was cool, something different.
Cool. Jacob, I know you didn't really get to see like the Undertaker, as the American Badass or like Big Evil as much. Have you seen like any videos of Taker? Like, have you ever seen any of his promos and matches? And if you have, like, what did you think about his gimmick during that time?
Oh yeah, even though I didn't grow up in the '90s, I watch a lot of classic wrestling. So, I definitely remember what you guys are saying. I think it was good in a sense of, and even Taker said this during a recent interview. He basically was saying how like he felt like the dead man character was getting stale, and he felt like, and he always says that once he starts to feel stale, then the audience is going to get stale. So he really had to obviously, create a new character to pretty much um, have longevity and to pretty much reinvent himself. And I think that throughout the business, him and Chris Jericho stick out in mind. I would even put Chris as far as wrestlers who can reinvent themselves. Even Randy to a certain degree, not on the level of a Jericho or a Taker, but Randy can do it. But I think it was good for the Attitude Era because Taker said that if he would have played that dead character his whole career, specifically that character wouldn't have lasted the entire Attitude Era. So he felt like he had to change it up. And you see badass characters like Stone Cold and The Rock, and now he was going to be an American badass. And in real life, like what Brandon said, that's who Taker really is. You know, he rides motorbikes. That's how he dresses, leather jackets. And I think it was just cool because he got to show the audience that he can cut good promos when he wants to. You know, he can actually talk on the mic well when he wants to. He can be that badass guy that can relate to that portion of society who's just a regular guy if he wants to. So I just think that that time in career, Taker probably spoke more. Obviously, he did more promos. He was much more personable. So this gave a glimpse to his character, and I think he allowed fans to pretty much see himself. Now, so I think that that character alone, I think it made the fans appreciate the dead character even more so because like now once he actually returned to the dead man, you never heard during his career that fans said, "Oh, Undertaker sucks. He's so boring. Let him change his character up. Let him do this and that." See, this is what the towns don't do, like a John Cena. Cena's been pretty much faced his entire career. Now, I think Cena, in my personal opinion, he could be a heel, but I think he's more so suited as a babyface. But John really never reinvented himself like that. And also, he was shoved down the fans' throat. And there's nothing against John. I grew up on Cena. You know, I like the John Cena character from 2005 to 2008. I think that one was a great run. And I think if Cena would have put more times over, not to his fault though, Vince makes the decision at the end of the day. I think fans would have appreciated Cena more. But I think Undertaker, he just understands psychology. He understands the business aspect, and he understands whenever he feels like he's stale, he will change up his character, and he will basically, and also you don't see the Undertaker too often. So when he does make an appearance, it's something special like a Brock. So I had no problem with that. I think it was great, and for me personally, I think it made fans appreciate both sides of two characters, and I just think that the badass American character was pretty much it was him taking a break from the character that he was, and just basically, just I think that was pretty much him having a break and just having fun within the business, putting people over, and I just think it was just time to just stay away from that character for a little bit. And pretty much, I think his character, that badass character, and he picked the perfect time because it was well suited into the Attitude Era. And I think once the business was shifting, I think that's when the Undertaker went back to the dead man character. So I think it was great.
Yo, I mean, I love what Brandon said, and I especially love what Jacob said. I mean, I think I couldn't have said that any better. It's very true. I think this is what I appreciate about the Undertaker, his ability to understand how the audience is and understand the time period. I think was what made it so special for him to keep the character. And this is the reason why, if you guys see my background in the back, and then also you guys see the overlay, these were the different phases of the Undertaker, like throughout his career. As you guys see, he has the Phantom of the Opera face. That was actually from the orbital bone that he actually broke in a match where he got, actually, no, not in a match. I think it was in a house show where he got clotheslined the wrong way. And then they have that. Obviously, you got the Ministry of Darkness. Obviously, it was perfect for that time period. And the thing was, though, he was starting to display some attitude and breaking some kayfabe. But what I loved about the American Badass gimmick was this was a guy. It was no longer. That's where he's from. He's a Texan. So we got to hear kind of like the real stuff. And it was like the Undertaker just felt more personable. And like Jacob said, like when I first saw the gimmick and I was like, oh, he's no longer the dead man. He's no longer the Prince of Darkness. And I was like, I wonder how this is going to pull off. And I was like, this is so different. When he first came back, I didn't even realize that was him until I see him with his bandana. He's wearing long leather jackets. And I'm just like, and he's riding a motorcycle. And I was like, I wonder how this is going to work out. But I thought it was pretty cool. I said, something different. I said, the first thing I said was, he's going to sound more, his promos are going to sound more real now. And I said, I'm pretty sure he's going to be cutting some good promos. The Undertaker, like Jacob said, he proved to you, Mark Calloway proved to you that when he can cut really good promos, and I thought that was it was good to see. Um, Honestly, I thought in 2002 when he became Big Evil, I thought he was that was actually one of his most underrated mic work when he was doing. When you look at obviously his rivalry with Flair and just the character overall, man. He was just doing an unbelievable job. So it showed you that he can obviously, put a great gimmick, and it was a nice way to take a break. Uh, and Jacob is absolutely right. It made you miss the Taker character even more. And much respect. Now I know some of the guys were talking about, I know he had mentioned John Cena. With John Cena, here's what fans get mad about. They get mad about for the fact that they felt that Super Cena was kind of shoved down their throats like time and time and time again. And then that's what made them want to. They missed John Cena, thugonomic Cena, because thugonomic Cena, it was just somebody who just pretty much didn't give a damn, even though he was ruthless aggression. He in a way he was kind of like the teeny tiny tail end of the Attitude Era a little bit, in terms of Cena's character. So I think that that's what people miss about Cena. It was like they felt that he was more authentic as Thugonomics compared to what he became with Super Cena, like over the years, and he became that ultimate babyface, fight the good fight, I never quit. Even though he was saying that during his Thugonomics gimmick when he first was champion, it was a bit more different though. Cena was connecting with the audience because, like, even in his own words, real recognizes real. But that's not what we were getting. Like once he became the Super Cena and trying to always appease to the fans and becoming the number one face and just emulating kids looking up to him. That's what it is. They felt that kids looked at him as authentic, but it's like the real adults looked at him and they're like, oh, this guy is such phony. Like it doesn't even feel real. Like it sucks. He's overrated. So I think it's a matter of personal preference. I will always say that I appreciate Thugonomic Cena much more because I felt like I got a much more real character, a real John Cena, as compared to when Cena they were making him get all these title opportunities. And like we've been mentioning about him being the face, it was it was very different, and it was something that people got tired of, which is why people get excited. Cena got booed a lot. It was another thing is that he was not a traditional like wrestler, and they didn't like the fact that he couldn't wrestle. So I think that's one of the reasons why people don't like John like that, because he's not as traditional. When you compare to a guy like CM Punk, when he got to do his pipe bomb, and then look how authentic that he was beginning to sound, and how the WWE and a lot of the fans, they regained interest in the product when it was to the point where people were starting to like not watch the WWE anymore, and they were losing fans and they were plummeting in ratings. So I think that's what it is about Cena. But I think the American Badass was definitely a very nice gimmick. He had some underrated feuds during that time with John Cena. Obviously, he had some nice little feuds with Hogan briefly when he came back. Obviously with Triple H, when he was the Game. I know Jacob talked about that 2001 WrestleMania match between Taker and Triple H. To be honest with you, I know that the WrestleMania 28 end of an era match is the one that gets focused on a lot because it was an end of the era and they had the quote unquote end of the Attitude Era, quote unquote, because you had three guys who were kind of part of it. Shawn wasn't part of it as much because of his back injury, but it was because they were kind of like a dying breed. But in my opinion, as good as that match was, I personally believe that American Badass Taker going up against Triple H the Game when he was at the height of his powers at WrestleMania 17, I think was the best match out of the three that they had, in my opinion. People could go back and forth about that in terms of, what they think. But, again, it's a matter of opinion and preference. But I actually like their WrestleMania 17 match better compared to the three matches that they had at WrestleMania overall, period. But that's just my opinion. I mean, so yeah, I mean, the American Badass gimmick, I think, was pretty much one of the coolest gimmicks, and I think that that was the great part, and I think you guys both touched upon it. The great part about having that gimmick was it made you want more out of his old gimmick. That you could feel that you can still get some stuff out of the old gimmick because again, Undertaker understood about timing and he understood about time period. So he understood the time of the business. Anytime he saw that the business was changing, he realized that he didn't want the character that he was playing to become too stale. And then all of a sudden, then you kind of ride off into the sunset, and that's just the end of it. He made himself stay relevant. He just had that ability. And I think that's how he evolved along with his character. So I think that was um I think that's what made me so special about Taker, just his ability to evolve. Um the other things that I have to say that make him, in my opinion, like the greatest of all time for me is, they always talk, they talk about his loyalty, and obviously, the WWE obviously made him who he is along with what he was able to do with his character. I just think that he just had a great job of having the ability to command the locker room. And I don't think he would have garnered that kind of respect had he went to WCW, even if he was an established star. I think the fact that he's a great locker room guy and he has mostly the amount of respect from his peers, and how much they rave about him, I truly believe is one of the reasons why he is considered to me the greatest of all time, and that you can make the case for him. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that him being as a locker room leader and then having the respect of his peers and how they talk about him, and then obviously with his with his WrestleMania classics, because obviously I think that the WrestleMania just help cement it even more. Do you guys, think with those things, help him in terms of making his case for the greatest of all time? One, his locker room presence, and then two, obviously, the history of WrestleMania.
Absolutely. I can't really say too much on that because you covered it all, but absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Jacob?
Yeah, so we were talking about the locker room. If that's correct.
Yeah, so I mentioned the locker room, and then obviously, him being synonymous with WrestleMania because we know that Shawn Michaels he gets called Mr. WrestleMania, but I just think that the Undertaker is synonymous with what the streak became. So, and I said, like, in your opinion, is him being a locker room presence, and then along with him having that WrestleMania streak, does that you know those two things, give him such a large case as to why he can be, the GOAT in terms of wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two things, and there's pretty much obviously more about him that we know and probably don't know, but you just hear about how the peers talk about him and how he carried himself with class and stuff like that. And just looking at Undertaker, I don't know because I read a lot of books and just about like war, and he seems like he could have been a general as far as going to the military. Just the way people said he was like the general in the locker room, and whenever problems would arise, like the natural instinct is to go up to Vince, but no, people would go up to Taker and ask him, "What do you think about this and that?" In all like videos on YouTube, you know how there's like shoot interviews, how
Hmm.
wrestlers talk about a certain wrestler once they're out of the business. I don't know if it's just me, but I've never heard no one ever talk negatively about Taker. So that goes to show you the type of person that he was. If you were the top guy or if you were a guy on the bottom, he was accessible. You could ask him for advice if he was around. Obviously, during this generation, he wasn't around because he was a part timer and he was a legend, obviously. But during the 2000s and 90s, and specifically during the Monday Night Wars, there were a lot of superstars that asked Taker for advice and stuff like that. Um, there's a lot, people who said a lot of great things about him, and obviously the streak. I think the Undertaker streak made WrestleMania. Obviously, WrestleMania is a brand in of itself, right? Because it's not just one person that mix up WrestleManias, multiple wrestlers and stuff like that. But he definitely made uh, his streak synonymous with WrestleMania. You know, it was definitely a big part of who his career was. You know, and you know, there's obviously talks about you know, he didn't put people over, but hey, if there's anybody that nobody should bitch and complain that is getting over like that, it's Undertaker. He served his time in the business. You know, he was a full time guy. You know, he did everything in the business, so he deserved everything that he's ever gotten in his career. You know, and he's one of those superstars that never really needed the title. Undertaker was a draw in and of itself.
I was
You
gonna
know,
say that, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, obviously, and there's superstars that in my mind come to mind to where they don't need the championship. They sell themselves. Undertaker, Shawn, Kurt Angle, who is another one that doesn't need the title. Um, Chris Jericho, in my opinion, Chris Jericho never really won the World Heavyweight Championship and WWE Championship as much, you know, in his career. Even though he was a World Championship, he never needed the title because Jericho was a brand in of itself. So superstars like that are an anomaly. Now there's talks about Triple H. Triple H is a great wrestler, man. This guy had a great gimmick, but you can also tell throughout his career, you know, not too many people have been fond by, you know, Triple H, you know, obviously politics wise and stuff like that. I don't think it's as bad as people say it is, but I can see why. Obviously, everybody politics in the business, and I could obviously see how Triple H with marrying Stephanie rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But as far as Triple H, he put a lot of talent over. I think him and Undertaker put a lot of talent over. You know, we can say a lot of bad things about Triple H, but Triple H definitely put talent over. Now, if it's the talent that he handpicked to put over, that's a question. But I'll say he put talent over. Triple H definitely, alongside with Taker, had a definitely bigger impact in the business. You know, but as far as the level wise, I don't think Triple H. I think you can compare him with Taker, but it's not a comparison. At the end of the day, I think they had two different careers. I would say Triple H needed the title more to make himself the game. Undertaker really didn't. So I would say that Undertaker, there's really no one that you can compare him with, like what he's done throughout the business. Nobody, even Triple H, Shawn, just him staying throughout the business, even Austin Rock. You can't compare Taker really to anybody because there's never been anyone like that. So that goes to show you Undertaker who he was, you know, and to show how great he was. That it makes it harder for people like me to compare him to anyone else. That goes to show you how great you are. So, you know, we just got to congratulate what this man has done throughout the wrestling business. And I just hope that I know that he didn't go out the way he wanted to because I know fans would have, if there was a crowd, it definitely would have been great. But for me, in my personal opinion, I think Undertaker his career went a little longer than it should have.
Yeah,
Just in my
yeah.
opinion, because I feel like when Roman beat him and he basically put his hat in the ring at WrestleMania 33, everyone assumed that that was the end of his career. But you know, Vince, he always has to milk the dead man. You know, Undertaker's loyal to Vince. I'm here for Vince. I have to do what he says. You know, so I think that's
Mhm.
another aspect. But I don't think that really killed his career too much. I think Undertaker, as alongside with Vince, they really protected his character throughout his entire career. So um, I just, in my opinion, I think he went a little longer than he should have. But I wouldn't be surprised if he retired finally. If a crowd came back and he said, "Hey, this is I'm saying goodbye," I wouldn't have a problem with that. You know, because I think he deserves it, and I wouldn't get mad if he broke his promise that he's retiring. If they do one more match where there is a live crowd, I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't get mad. He deserves it, you know, and he's in his career to where he can do pretty much whatever he wants. So that's all I got to say, Lewis.
Yo, man, those are great points, and this is the reason why I have to make my case for Undertaker as being the greatest of all time, and why I wanted to do this live stream. And again, thank you to Brandon and Jacob for coming on. And I'll mention this again, when we close out, but I want to make this case for him. As Jacob mentioned, he took the words out of my mouth when I said that he had the character to where he did not need a championship to understand that how big, how over, and how valuable he was. how valuable he is and how valuable he was able to be throughout his career. I just take a look at SummerSlam of 1992. Undertaker, in a way, is kind of an MJ in his own right. And I say that because I know they say Hogan was like the MJ, but you have to understand something. The crazy part about it was like, in a way, Hogan, as big as he became, the world title kind of made him better. And the funny thing is, Jacob made a nice comparison to Triple H, and it's true. If you look at the careers of both Undertaker and Triple H, they were very different because Triple H, first of all, he needed a character that was actually going to maintain him long time success. That was with him becoming the game, becoming the biggest heel in the company, because the problem with Triple H is he was not going to compete with Austin and The Rock. They were the two biggest babyface megastars in the Attitude Era. So Triple H was not going to be able to compete with them when it came to that. So he had to become the biggest heel in the company, period. If he did not, Triple H would have not have lasted long. He would have never married the boss's daughter. We don't know how Triple H's career goes if he doesn't evolutionize himself into the game. You know, change his look, change his style. You know, become an aggressive, cerebral assassin that he ended up becoming. And but getting back to the Undertaker, it's true. He didn't need a championship to show you how great he was. That's how good he was. And when you compare him to all the other greats that have come into the WWE, and it's crazy because you have guys who have had long title reigns, guys who have won multiple championships. Let me tell you Undertaker's career. Yes, he does have a hardcore championship. I mean, that belt doesn't really matter, but again, it's part of his hardware. It's amazing that he was never United States or Intercontinental champion. But obviously, like Jacob said, he didn't need it. Undertaker, what won? He won 7 world titles, 4-time WWE champion, 3-time world heavyweight champion. WrestleMania, he allowed Undertaker almost became bigger than WrestleMania. That's what's so crazy about his character and evolving over the years. The streak became a life of its own. When people would describe it, and I know Jacob would know this on YouTube, Brandon, like, I remember Undertaker would be coming out like WrestleMania after WrestleMania. And then it was after WrestleMania 20 was when they really started mentioning about the streak, where they would say how undefeated he is. And it's like the way he's undefeated would be like going 16-0 is like going 16-0 and in Super Bowls, having an undefeated season. Like, that's how descriptive they got about his streak. That's what's so crazy about it. It's crazy. You cannot compare Austin to Taker. As impactful as Stone Cold was, his career was just short. If Austin had more peak years, you could really start to make the case for Austin. And you still can make a case for Austin. It's just not going to be as big as Taker. You look at The Rock. The Rock also is another guy who had great peak years, but they just don't measure up because Taker was just, he had a much longer, more sustainable run. You look at Triple H. He's still in the business. But the thing with Triple H is he's one of the greatest heels, and I think he's one of the more underrated heels in WWE history. And obviously, they're always connecting to DX, and Triple H is one of the all-time greats. But just ask yourself a question. And it's like what Jacob said. Triple H needed the title to kind of cement himself as to being one of the best in the business because it defined his character. And it proved that Triple H could be a main event player, which was kind of the question going into 1999 was, can Triple H become a main event player? That's not the case with The Undertaker. It's the guy is an attraction everywhere he goes. Undertaker, to me, is kind of like what Taker did to help what he did globally. And a shout out to Michael Kirshner. Make sure to like the video, guys. No. The reason that I say he's one of the greatest heels ever, but I think is that people don't really appreciate what Triple H did and in terms of his game character. Because it does, in a sense, it does kind of go unnoticed. And if you really think about Triple H, because they'll always say, well, he never drew like Austin and Rock did, but I really think so. That's true, Jay. Is going to be a narrative, obviously, to end it. I mean, if you look at the way that Brock Lesnar ended the streak, I thought that was. Some people say that it was the right move that Brock ended up ending the streak. To me, this is where Jacob's comment comes in. I felt like him ending the streak, to me, overstayed Taker's welcome in his last couple of years that he was coming in part time, in my opinion. I felt like for me, he overstayed his welcome a little bit because, like Jacob said, with the whole Roman Reigns thing, I thought he was just going to be done. Because then, because the thing is, after the match with Brock, I thought his last really good WrestleMania match was against CM Punk. After Brock Lesnar, Undertaker caught a concussion in the beginning of the match, and he was fighting off an instinct, but he was just not. The match was not that great. Then when it ended the streak, it was, to me, it was like, well, there's really no point in it for him to like wrestle in WrestleManias anymore. Like, because now it doesn't mean anything. Because every year you look forward to seeing the Undertaker, what opponent is going to try to knock him off in the streak. But Brock Lesnar kind of took that away from that, and then it took away the aura of the streak when he had that first loss. Now, let's face it, I don't think anybody's ever going to do what Undertaker was able to accomplish his first 21 WrestleManias that he went undefeated. No question about that. But I just felt like it was kind of tainted after the last couple of years. They made him go up. They made him go up against Bray Wyatt. That match was not great. They had the Hell in a Cell against Shane McMahon. That match was not that great. It had its moments, but it wasn't that great. The whole Roman Reigns match, he was injured, so he had a bad hip. And you can clearly tell that Roman Reigns carried the match. So that's why it was hard to watch him. He had his little moment with John Cena, but that match was too quick. And like I said, I know Cena was actually doing some underrated in-ring work. If you look at that, and from that time period, from like 2015 to 2017, especially with his awesome U.S. Open challenge that he was doing, and was really putting up some really top stars, talent during that time. But Jacob is right. I just thought that he stayed a little bit too long than what he should have. But at the end of the day, he deserves to go out the way that he should. If once things get back to normal and fans are allowed to be in the building, I think Taker should consider having one more match. That way, fans could be able to appreciate in an arena how much he meant to them, for their childhood, what he means to them as wrestling fans. And I can't imagine how Undertaker would break down if he does, because I feel like this is going to be the one time that he actually might break character and be in tears, if he's in front of an audience and has one last match with whoever. Let me ask you guys this question. Who do you think would be the right opponent for you, for Taker, to close out his career if he was to have one more final match? Where do you think he should have it to? Do you think he should have it at Survivor Series, or do you think he should have it at WrestleMania? Because obviously he's synonymous with the streak in WrestleMania. But it's going to kind of suck as well because of the fact that he closed out a 30-year chapter to where it all started, and it was at Survivor Series. I think for me, it would probably have to be WrestleMania for me to kind of close out, just because of the fact that I think he closed out a 30-year career at Survivor Series. But for you guys, where would you want the match to happen? Do you want it to be a regular wrestling match? Does there have to be a stipulation? And who do you think would be the right guy to face Taker for him to close out his career?
Me personally. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Me personally, I guess I'm a minority because I believe in going for a circle since it all begun at Survivor Series. I just let it finish at Survivor Series. As for the opponent, we seen Triple H and Shawn Michaels go at it with them. I'm more between either Kane or AJ Styles. That, since brother versus brother, let it in there. And with AJ Styles, I see a lot of Shawn Michaels with how AJ Styles wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
His performance and all that. If Undertaker has the gas to do it with AJ, hey, go for it.
Okay.
And plus, it'll make up, because me personally, I didn't like that. And I understand it's the pandemic and all of that, the coronavirus. So I understand that. But I didn't like that match with AJ Styles. So I feel that
Yeah.
AJ Styles and Taker with fans, I'll be a happy camper.
Okay. What about you, Jacob?
Yeah, I can definitely see those two guys that Brandon picked. For me, because it's very tough to narrow to one, but for me, I think I prefer like a younger talent. Um, as far as that's a great one. The two that come to mind is probably the Fiend Bray Wyatt. I'll probably say that because I feel like if Bray goes up against the Undertaker, it'll elevate his character as well. But also, I think another guy that Randy should face again would probably be Randy Orton. And I think Randy is at that stage in his career. Randy still has some great years left in him, but I think Randy, just like Edge, those two guys obviously benefited facing the Undertaker, but I think they gave the Undertaker a great run as well. So I just think with Randy as a heel right now, and with what he's done in the business and cutting great promos from a storyline wise, I would say put Randy with Taker, and I'd probably say you let Taker beat Randy because I want Undertaker to go out on a win. I don't want him to lose at WrestleMania, so I think you put Taker over Orton. But I'll preferably say the Fiend Bray Wyatt number one, and then Orton on second. But those are the top two for me.
Okay. So Brandon has Kane and AJ Styles. I can see the case for AJ, like Brandon said, because it's funny because Vince and a lot of people in the WWE, they were trying to see if they could book an AJ versus Shawn Michaels match. But Shawn was on record as saying that he does not want to compete again, even though he did the thing with Triple H and they did the whole tag team match against Taker and King, the Brothers of Destruction. That match was terrible. I saw the match. That match was not great. It just shows you where all guys are pretty much at this point in their careers. So I think that I thought it was bad. I think with Taker, if there's three guys that come to mind for me when it comes to ending his career. I was thinking about AJ, but it was only because they just had that boneyard match. It would make sense if they did have a regular match this time and they'd be in front of a live audience. I thought about Randy Orton. I thought Randy would be a good opponent for him, especially because of the fact that Randy still has years left in the tank. And Randy has been producing some of his best work that he's put up in a long time. So I think that'd be great. Um, I had thought about Edge. I thought that would have been a nice way because I honestly thought that he was actually one of Taker's like last rivalries, like from that late 2000s that I thought was some of the best. I think, and then the thing is, if you look at the promos that Edge and Randy Orton that they can both have with the Undertaker, I think it'd be great as final matches. Taker could get a win either one of them. The other guy that I was thinking about, and I don't think that gets enough, and I think he's a star on the rise. If I'm thinking about a young talent, I'm thinking Keith Lee. Keith Lee, who's on the Raw roster. I think Undertaker can do some great stuff with Keith Lee. And I think Keith Lee is definitely somebody that I think that could deliver a great match with Undertaker for him to go up on top, especially being that he's a big guy. And Taker has historically some of his best matches with big guys. You look at Batista, you look at Kane, you look at the talent that Keith Lee is in the ring. I would actually like for him to do that for real. I think that it'd be great to see him that. I would like to see Keith Lee go up against Taker to pretty much end his career, and then have him go out on top. It'd be a standing ovation when the match is over, and then Taker can pretty much go back in the sunset. So I think in terms of big man, I would like Keith Lee. If we're talking about a legend, I could definitely see, like Jacob was saying, I could definitely see Randy Orton again. I would put either Randy Orton or Edge to go up against him. And then in terms of the new talent, I could see a Keith Lee, go up against him to end his career. So I like those guys from that aspect. And so on that note, we're gonna finish with this last question before we close out the show. So again, guys, the case for the Undertaker being the greatest of all time. I'm gonna start off, and then you guys can finish it off. The reason that I think the Undertaker is the greatest of all time is the longevity and the morphing of his character, and to be able to sustain it so long. We've seen so many different faces, but I think his psychology and how he went about his character throughout 30 years is what made it so special. His ability to command a crowd with being mysterious and dark and not have a title, not you don't need a championship to see how great you are to an audience. Undertaker, to me, his global impact in the wrestling business is one of those that probably arguably will never be matched. His ability to be dominant, not just great, but dominant over the years, is what truly's made him so special. And like I said, his ability to be a general, both in the locker room and in the ring, I think is what makes the Undertaker the greatest. And I just think most importantly, there's been so many great superstars in WWE and wrestling history. I'm saying this right now, with the way that the business has evolved in the last 30 to 40 years, I don't think we are ever, ever, ever going to see a character like him either for a very long time or ever again in this lifetime. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I think The Undertaker makes the case for being the greatest of all time. And any closing thoughts, Jacob or Brandon, before we close out the show?
You you hit it right on the head. I'm gonna add piggyback by saying, on top of that longevity, the elusiveness didn't hardly break. Like while he was active on the roster, he didn't break character. And when you seen him, he was with the garb on and all that nice stuff. He did, like you said, he didn't need a championship to show his greatness. And plus, he had a genuine care for the business. This just wasn't just punch a clock, punch out, go home. He was committed. He expected the best from his opponent. His Anybody who worked with, you ain't gonna have to do a job and not feel his wrath. He seemed like a stand-up guy too. He's the kind of guy I just love to shake his hand. I love to
Yeah.
meet him.
Huh. Awesome.
Not,
Hold on.
not, go ahead.
No, finish. Go ahead, Brandon. Finish.
I was, um, uh, you said everything else, so I just add those little quips
Okay.
in there. And that's
All
it.
right, cool. No, those are great. Those are great points. And before Jacob goes real quick and gives his thoughts real quick before we close out, I just want to say this because there's some things I forgot to mention. What makes him so iconic also is you look at the theme songs that he's had over the years. It's some of the best ever. You look at the organs. You're talking about the Graveyard Symphonies. The Bells and Thunder was probably my favorite theme from when he was when he was the man from the dark side. I love the Bells and Thunder. I don't know. There was just something about that song that just resonated with me. I just kept playing it over and over again. I don't know why, but I just loved it. Some people say that his Ministry of Darkness, the corporate ministry gimmick, was arguably his best, and I like that one too a lot. Then you also obviously had the Kid Rock, and then you had the American. Then you had the Limp Bizkit song, "Rollin'," one of my favorite tracks of all time, with him. And then he has the modified version of the Grim Reaper theme again. So that made it special. Obviously, the people forget about the Funeral Parlor, which was a segment that used to happen in the early years of his career, which is something that also stood out when superstars and people would come for the interviews and Paul Bear would do them. Go ahead, Brandon. What are you gonna say?
I was just gonna say where he buried the Ultimate Warrior and me screaming at my TV screen, "I hate you."
Right. Yeah, right. So like those to me, those are just all right. Jacob, go ahead, man. What you were gonna say about the again about the Undertaker in terms of making the case for the greatest of all time, as I pointed out.
For me, like the greatest of all time is like a matter of opinion.
Right, right.
So I don't know, like as far as like being the greatest of all time, I'll probably say he's just as far as longevity wise, I'll probably put him number one. Just he's done everything that every fan expects of a superstar. A draw, he had the look, he had the physique, he had the mic skills, and he had the in ring work ability to do
Mm-hmm.
all three. Very few wrestlers can do that. For me, I would say that as far as the business wise, you always have to book Hogan there. Even Andre the Giant, I think Hogan, Andre the Giant really changed the wrestling business as far as being a draw.
Well,
They're the ones.
hold on, Jacob, real quick. I know you were mentioning those guys, but the only reason I'm just keeping it in terms of like making the case for the Undertaker, because it's like you said, it's all subjective and it's all opinion based. But the reason that I mentioned all the things that I mentioned, I'm just making the case because the reason this is this is the reason why I'm doing the GOAT series. I don't think there's a definitive GOAT when it comes to wrestlers, because I say that a lot of the guys that are impactful in the business in their own way, they can make a case. I'm sorry if I didn't clarify the question, but I'm just asking you guys. I think what makes the Undertaker make the case for being the greatest of all time. So let me clarify it that way instead of saying it that way. So, like,
Okay.
what gives the Undertaker the case for him being the greatest of all time?
Okay. All right. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah. Um, okay. What makes sense? His case for Undertaker can make the case for being the greatest of all time is that he probably had a big impact on WrestleManias than all the other guys. You can make a case for him for that. The streak, um, him being able to evolve and recreate himself like other superstars didn't. Um, like for instance, like a Hulk Hogan, his gimmick was great, but that's a gimmick that can't last 30 years like Undertaker. You know why? Because Hogan was that aggressive. You don't see this is one thing I like about the Undertaker. Undertaker, he's so smart. He basically said, right, when he was doing his promos, he would talk quiet and whisper because he wanted to draw the audience in on what he was saying. So when he spoke, his words meant more. That is very intelligent. I never thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the 80s, Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Rowdy Piper, all those guys would scream their lungs out, right? Because back in those times, they wanted to make themselves larger than life. But he bring the opposite. Now I
Yeah,
want to talk quietly because I want to. I think less is much. I think less is more. If I
yeah,
can
yeah,
do less, if I can do less with my ability and not overachieve myself and to basically make fans curious on what my next move is and be unpredictable, I think I have far more of a greater impact than those guys are. So I think Undertaker, as far from a character standpoint, he's better than everybody that's ever done. Let's just be honest. As far as reinventing himself, recreating himself, he
mm,
can make the case for that. So Undertaker is probably the only superstar wrestler in the history, not just of the WWE, but in the world, that has several cases on where he can make. He has several cases on why he's the greatest of all time. That I feel that other superstars don't. So that's my reason why I feel Undertaker is the greatest of all time.
awesome, man. Those are great points. Great points. It's true. I did hear Undertaker say that on the Broken Skulls podcast with Stone Cold. He mentioned he talked about, and that's what that was the one of the finer details about his character that I actually went back and listened to, and I mentioned it earlier in the live stream. I said the one thing that he would do is he would lower his head and then he would let Paul Bear kind of pretty much kind of do all the talking. Paul Bear would actually bring that squeaky, creepy voice. But like Jacob said, it's those little things that he does. He speaks in a more quieter tone so you can actually listen what he's actually saying. And then when you listen, it's like you can hear what he's saying. and the fact that he wants his words to mean more. So basically, he was able to draw you in without having to overly be aggressive. Didn't really need to be larger than life. He was larger than life in a quiet way. That's how the Undertaker pretty much did it. It was methodical. It was deliberate, but it was very effective. And it was like he found a way to draw you in despite being different, doing the polar opposite. Say it again.
Oh shoot! I meant to mute myself. I was mimicking somebody.
Oh, okay. No,
I mean, my
Jason.
my
No, it's okay.
apologies.
No, it's okay, Brandon. No problem. So, Jay says, screaming the lungs out. Well, what you talking about, brother? Yeah, exactly. That's the things that Undertaker would do. Like I said, I appreciate Macho Man. And the funny thing is, Hogan and Macho are very different in the way they did their promos. They were similar because they did kind of scream their lungs out, but Macho did it in such a way that was just more entertaining to me from when I listened to the both of them talk. So, but that'll be something in the future. So, um, really quick before we close out. I've done Brett. Make sure you guys go check that out. 15 minutes long on why he has the case for the GOAT. We just did The Undertaker on this live stream. So I want to ask Brandon and I want to ask you, Jacob, and I actually want to ask the chat. Who is the next guy that you guys would like me to do, in terms of making the series for the GOAT in wrestling? Who would be a guy that would come to mind for you guys before we close out the show? And I will put a poll up in the community tab probably tomorrow, most likely, to see who we want to do next. And we'll have a live stream on that one. So, Brandon, who would you like? And then Jacob, who would you like? Anybody in the chat will let me know. And then obviously I'll just come with the community tab for this one.
That's a good one, man. I was thinking Sting, but
Okay.
not many people know about Sting, though. I don't think that's going to get a lot of votes.
You might be surprised with Sting. You might I might have to consider him. But Jacob, who would you like to see?
Ooh, that's a tough one. For the GOAT series, is it like specifically like the top superstars that you want to talk about, Lewis?
Well, basically the superstars that really have a case for being the greatest of all time in terms of the impact that they had on the business.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, even if there's guys who you would think, or even a guy that was probably maybe in the ruthless aggression era, maybe that you could still say that probably would even make the case even for today too. Ruthless attitude, generation years. I mean, there's guys who I could come off back and forth off the top of my head, like just like that I could make the case. But who was a guy that you would like to see?
Probably we could talk about The Rock. I think you can do a series on that. And also, we could talk about Chris Jericho. I know Chris is probably not seen as a good, but Chris, man, the stuff that he's doing, man, just his career wise, I think Chris, man, Chris, what?
Oh no, go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
No. So I was just saying, Chris and stuff like that. That could be another topic. Eddie, Chris Benoit. I know that it's a taboo subject. There's so much other wrestlers, but I think Eddie Guerrero. A lot of fans, Lewis, people actually love Eddie, man. Even till this day, in the comment sections, whenever you look back on some of the ruthless aggression videos, everybody would always say, "I wish Eddie was here. I wish Eddie was here," and that goes to show you that even though Eddie passed away decades ago, you can tell his impact on just wrestling as a whole, man. And no, he wasn't seen as the top guy, but he was a top guy, but not on the level of Undertaker. But as far as fans, like the hardcore fans and the purists, Eddie's like always in everybody's conversation as his gimmick and the way he worked. And I just think that would be a great topic if you wanted to talk about.
Okay. And real quick before I close out, Sean is mentioning about Goldberg. The thing with Goldberg is I would like to do one on him, but I just think that his biggest peak was all in WCW. I thought his run in the WWE started with promise, but it ended up as a failure. And obviously, he's come back since 2016, but obviously, the business is in a different point during this time. So Goldberg is very hard to do because his impact is really more so in WCW. And Jacob was talking about how WCW doesn't build up their stars. Well, he was one of the guys that they had in their minor leagues that actually ended up being golden in terms of building him up to what he became in WCW. And then he was must-see TV, even though his matches for most of 1998 were finishing pretty quick up until he went against better talent like DDP and Sting and then Kevin Nash, even against Bam Bam Bigelow, guys like that. But with Goldberg, I think that his peak years were in WCW, to be honest. I mean, I know he came into the WWE. He had, there were some good matches, but they weren't all that great. And the thing is that Goldberg's character to me wasn't going to be the same because there weren't a lot of guys he could push that he would be able to push around. There were more established stars in the WWE than there were in WCW. So, his character was going to be harder to deal with. And the funny thing is, Goldberg actually came established, because he was a two-time United States champion, 2 tag team championships, and then obviously, he won the world title when he was there. So he actually had a more established, background. But
I was thinking more maybe Ric Flair, maybe, or Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Ric Flair would be another. For sure. I mean, Ric Flair definitely has a case for being the greatest of all time. There's no question about that. Okay. Okay. Sean says that he has a few cases on why Goldberg is in the combo. I mean, if you can make that case, definitely. But I think the next series that we are going to be doing is actually going to be on. So this is the way that it's going to go for the next two. The next guy that I'm going to do is going to be the People's Champion, The Rock. So I'm going to do him next. After The Rock, we are going to be doing Chris Jericho. And I think before I close out again, as I say, I think Chris Jericho, he may have not been seen as the top guy when you look at his WWE career. But like Jacob said, what he's doing in AEW right now, the work that he's been able to do every time he comes back, and if you look at the segment that he had with Kevin Owens and the whole thing with, you just made the list stuff, Jericho has the ability to pretty much sell anything. He could make something so stale look like something worth watching. That's how special Chris Jericho is. Don't want to give it too much, but that's what it's going to entail. Yeah, Andre the Giant or even Hulk Hogan, I will look into those guys as well. I didn't get to see much of Andre during his early years, so I would have to start watching tapes on him. I did see Hulk Hogan more so on the tail end because I'm a late 80s baby, so I didn't get to see some of Hogan's early work, but I'll have to take a look at that, as we go on to be able to do these videos. But the next two guys I'm going to be doing is The Rock and Chris Jericho, so we'll love to get you guys on that for that one for sure.
Awesome.
And we'll definitely talk about Rock stories. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was a wonderful stream. Thank you to Jacob and Brandon. Salute to you, man. I know it wasn't easy for you, but I felt like that you did an excellent job being able to be here. Like I said, the biggest thing was you get to be yourself, and I thought you did an excellent job in terms of the points you made about Taker making the case for being the GOAT. So I want to thank you for being on here. Like I said, Sean, I got you. I got you next time, bro. You could come in for The Rock. So, and Brandon, you're welcome to come back for The Rock. Jacob, I always send out my invitation. You always making great points. You're such knowledgeable of the business. Even though if you were, you're a late bloomer and you're more of the ruthless aggression era, tailed in, and then obviously, going to the late 2000s. But your knowledge of these superstars and I know you do the best that you do the best you can, man. But your knowledge of wrestling is just impeccable. So I always want to thank you for always coming in and just talking wrestling. So salute to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Jacob and Brandon, for being special guests. I truly appreciate talking. I mean, this was great. I feel like we got to learn a little bit from one another. And it's like, again, we're talking about the Undertaker, making the case for him, being the GOAT. So, ladies and gentlemen, next wrestling video, making the case for the GOAT series, the People's Champion, The Rock. That should be very interesting. So,
thank you. I deeply appreciate you inviting me on here.
Of course, man.
I had a lot of fun on here too. I really enjoyed myself.
All right, man. That's what it's all about, man. We just, you come to the live streams. I'll let you know, Sean. So I'm gonna put the community post, and I'll send out invitations. For obviously for Jacob, Brandon, you're welcome to come back on, and then Sean.
Thank you.
You come on back in here. So,
I need to look at your commute. Ooh, I'm just stepping all over you. I do apologize.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I know you don't mean it, so it's okay.
No, of course not. I just want to say, I got to look at your community thing more often.
All right, man. Definitely. But again, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Brandon. You guys have been awesome guests. Jacob, as always, can't wait to talk with wrestling with you again. Again, if you guys have not, make sure you guys go check out Wealth Dreamers. That is Jacob's channel. Make sure that he hasn't put up content lately, but I'm sure when he'll ever get the opportunity, he'll put up content pretty soon. So make sure you guys, make sure to go subscribe to him. The guy is just, the guy's an encyclopedia with when it comes to life, when it comes to just in the things that he talks about. They're just great advice, great tips. You could just tell that this guy is well educated and just a great guy to talk to. Again, just unbelievable stuff, and knows his basketball, knows his wrestling. Just a great guy to listen to. And again, just make sure to go check his channel out if you guys have not. Wealth Dreamers is the name of the channel. Okay, guys. So thank you. Great stream. We'll be back on the next time with the wrestling talk again. Salute to Brandon for the $3 donation. Truly appreciate that, my friend. Thank you so much. All right, guys. So from the Lewis Sports Network, from Jacob Lone Wolf, from Brandon Nicholson, this has been another one. As Ryan always says, we chat together, we stream together, we're family for life. Continue to like the videos. Continue to subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Make sure you let your people know about this on your social media platforms. This is Lewis Sports Network saying bless up. Live, laugh, love. Thank you guys for being a part of the stream. You guys already know my deal. Have a wonderful night. We'll be back with some basketball, Celtics Clippers tomorrow night. So make sure y'all pull up for that. I'll be doing the live stream for that one. And with The Rock, I believe I will be doing this live stream probably Sunday. If not Sunday, I will be doing it Monday. And I could probably do a back-to-back with him and Jericho. So just stay tuned. I'll be putting that in the community tab. All right, guys. So take care. And on the next one, and I am gone. Take care.
On the pool. In the air, left field, and Pools has given St. Louis the lead. A dramatic, towering 3-run home run.
Murray out of the pocket. 7 seconds.